that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody. Welcome to the grand finale. I mean, we have other things to talk about after, but this is pretty much the grand finale. Unlike most of these books, which have 4 books within the novel, this is 6, and 2 epilogues. So I've decided to make this a holy trinity, a 3-parter. Unlike everything I've been doing throughout this entire series, which has been 2. So this first video is going to be on the first 3 books. Only spoilers for the first 3 books, because I haven't read the rest. 4, 5, and 6. And the last video would be both the epilogues, and my overall thoughts on Malazan Book of the Fallen as a whole. And we'll round that all off with a final non-spoiler video, because obviously you who are watching this far in, you know what this is all about. You know what you know. But I would also like to give my perspective and try to give some good reasonings for new people as to why they should read Malazan Book of the Fallen if they haven't. So that'll be last. And of course we got Blood and Bone and A Sail by Essamont, and then we start the prequel and sequels. So, or sequel, we're in 1 currently at the time of recording. But that's pretty much it. Non-spoiler wise, well, Crippled God, books 1 to 3. Right now, I mean, and again, this was the whole thing with 9 and 10 is that it was originally, at least in Erickson's head, meant to be 1 book, but it ended up being split into 2. And so this first part feels like Dust of Dreams Part 2, more so than, because the thing about every other novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, right, is that they may all connect, they may all further the story, but because they were each, you know, an individual novel, and they kind of succinctly told a through-line story in that particular story, even if it was also advancing more. So each story kind of like a unique flavor to it. Each kind of felt a little bit different. But this one really just feels like Dust of Dreams again. Like I'm just like reading another chapter in a really long book. So I don't really have too much to add. I mean, everything that was going on in Dust of Dreams, if you were reading, was going on here. The same characters and some more. And we're all heading to this desert area for this final confrontation for whatever's going to happen. And there's a lot of revelations being put throughout here, but really as to plot-wise, what I can tell you, at least within these first 3 books, that's basically it. You know, we're all, every faction, every party is kind of gathering to this spot. And we're viewing everybody, we're talking to them, seeing how they're doing. And that's basically it. As for bigger revelations, we get some things here, but nothing plot relevant, I guess, to say, at least that I can say now. It might come into play in the second half, but I don't know. So, I know it's really vague, you know, but that's, you know, as for the first 3 books, is basically all that's going on. So, I mean, it's the grand finale, and I hear nothing but great things about this finale. That it absolutely, you know, is satisfying and conclusive. Sorry, I guess we'll see. But as right now, it just feels like more Dust of Dreams. That's not necessarily a positive or negative, it's just more of the same. I'm sure the latter half of more of that, oh my god, this finale sort of situation going on. But right now, they're just kind of all heading in a certain direction. We're also getting some stuff with the Jade. The Jade's coming back into play, which again is a big deal because it was a big deal in Deadhouse Gates and then kind of just went away. It would kind of reappear here and there with Hiboric, like in House of Chains or the Bone Hunters. But it's always very minor, and you very much don't understand what's going on. I still don't understand fully what the Jade stuff is all about. That may be revealed in the second half, I don't know. But it is interesting that a plot thread kind of brought up all the way back in book 2 is mattering for the finale. So there's stuff with that. Other revelations are had. Again, I don't know if there's a more character-centered than plot-centered, so I don't know how much that gives relevance to the overall plot of these first 3 books. But that's overall my thoughts. I'm enjoying it. It's not particularly enthralling. Again, I think so far Midnight Tides did it perfectly. Beat for beat for beat. There's not a single moment of Midnight Tides where I was bored. As opposed to like Memories of Ice, which was probably like my second favorite, but then again, there were times where I was bored. So, that's entirely subjective. But I'm just saying, like, I don't know, I'm measuring by like how much enjoyment I got throughout. And Midnight Tides is perfect for me. Every other book, I feel like, did it really need to be that long? You know, a little bit. So, I don't know. I'm enjoying it. I'm sure in the second half I'll be singing its praises. But as for this first chunk, it's fine. It's good. But I'm gonna get into spoilers, which is mainly what people want to hear my thoughts about. So, if you haven't read this book, I mean, you've read 9 books with like 7 of them being over 1,000 pages long. You're gonna finish it. You owe it to yourself to finish it. Don't give up. Finish the story. So, that's my thoughts, non-spoiler wise. I'm gonna get into spoilers. If you don't want that, there's the door. Alright, so we begin, and again, as I said before, Dust of Dreams begins with a prologue, but does not end with an epilogue. Whereas here in The Crippled God, we just started chapter 1. No prologue. But I do know there's an epilogue. So book 1, he was a soldier. We have a scene between Cotillion and Edgewalker, which was pretty cool. The forecaul sail have been becoming more prominent within the plot thread since Dust of Dreams. And who do we get reintroduced to here but Calm, the one that Karsa saved back during House of Chains. Now, I feel like I have not been confirmed or denied on this. So maybe somebody already, by the time, because I record these like massively ahead of time, so somebody might have already answered this in my Midnight Tides review. But in Midnight Tides, a forecaul sail does show up by the name of Serenity. Now, similarly to Serenity would be Calm. So I was curious as to if those are all meant to be the same person. But anyway, Calm is back, and she was in House of Chains. We get a very short but nice, and a lot of it's just kind of redundant, a lot of stuff that we've heard before, but we do get a POV section, or just a little speech, from the Crippled God, which was nice because it feels like he has not really mattered in a long, long time. It has honestly felt like it's been forever since he last mattered. Like, sure, we got Reaper's Gale, we got... Yeah, that's like it, you know, there's a little section where Karsus, you know, finally ends Roulade forever, and then the Crip goes like, ah! But that's like it, you know? And I guess that's the point, you know, he's not meant to be like the grand villain or anything, but for someone that was meant to be like this big important thing, it really didn't feel like that. So, also that's my washer, if you can hear that, I apologize. But, we have Male and Cruel, which, if you were reading in chronological order, then by this point in time, it has to do this little song every time it does the washer thing. It was really distracting. Anyway, if you're reading chronological order, then I believe by this point, Kroll would be in Teshrin's body. If you haven't read the ENCS Monk books, that would be a spoiler for you. But they don't really address that here, which fair enough. But Kroll should be Teshrin now. talking to Male, who of course is also Bug, so which we love to see. We learn from other characters that basically Tavor is going to be essential for the end. Ganos Perrin is around somewhere with his crew, so that's important. Oh my god, now my phone's going off. Hold on a second. It's okay. I've come back. No interruptions. To mention the most important thing. It's not actually the most important thing, I just think it's really funny. But there's been sexual tension between Samar Dev and Kars Orlong since the Bone Hunters. And they've appeared in every book except for Dust of Dreams. So they do appear here. And Samar finally, I mean, I'm also trying to say like give in, but like they both have clearly had an attraction for a long time. And they both give in. So they both have finally done the deed. And so I just wanted to mention that because, you know, it's not super important. Actually, now that I think about it, see, I do have spoilers on The God Is Now Willing in terms of who's the main character. Therefore, this might actually matter significantly depending on who a certain character's mother is. So, I guess we'll see. But we'll get there when we get there. Namanda Rake is back. I actually really like Namanda Rake. So I'm glad he's getting some more time. He hasn't had a lot of screen time, but he is back. Like, you know, this is kind of the big event, so like pretty much everyone is kind of here that matters to be here. Ganos and Shadowthrone have a discussion, and Ganos is just oozing with that freaking, I don't know what it is, that confident riz, you know, where you get all those like edits like of Dexter Morgan or I don't know, pick your favorite like guy, like it's like an edit on Instagram. Like that's Ganos Perrin talking to Shadowthrone right now, like just owning it. Just like, okay, and yeah, what about it? Like, I'm not explaining it well, but it was a phenomenal scene between the two of them. Tula Shorn is also back, as far as I'm understanding. Hasn't played a big role yet, but is around again. Then we have Mappo and Gruntle, who are also back. They continue to be with that whole caravan thread, whatever. We get a lot with Kaneb, who I've not really mentioned Kaneb in any of these videos because you know, it is a positive and a negative to the strength of Erickson's writing that he could write, you know, thousands of different characters and them all be seemingly pretty interesting. And like, sure, Kaneb's interesting. I don't dislike the guy. I do. But I never loved him either. You know, it's either you make a few sets of characters who people really, truly fall in love with, or you make a bajillion, and some of them are just going to be considered okay. I think that's part of the problem, right? Because you give me certain specific characters within this series, and my heart flutters. It just sparks with love for the series, whether it be Karsa, or Mappo, or Carium, or Ganos Perrin, or Tavor, or Krupi, or Anamander Rake, or Kaladin Brood, or, you know, all these reoccurring characters that you've kind of built an attachment toward, as opposed to these other characters that do keep reappearing, but they play smaller roles in the grand scheme. And then the thing is, right, the whole thing with Erickson is he wanted, and Asimov, they wanted, you know, saving the days, and, you know, World War II wasn't due to one person. It was due to a multitude of people, right? And that's kind of what the Malazan and you know, the books try to show, is that it's not just one person. It's a collaborative effort to changing the future, you know. And so we have a lot of POVs always. It's just not every character is going to stand out to you as much. So Kanem never really truly did. So I never truly mentioned him. Like, there's important stuff he does, but I couldn't be bothered. If it doesn't interest me, I'm not going to talk about it. Other people are going to love him or hate him or have a strong emotion, and they'll have better to add than I do. But I just simply don't. However, here we see a lot of his resentment of Tavor. And the reason this scene, or this section, works so well is because it not only gives characterization for Keneb, it gives just characterization to the Bone Hunter army as a whole. Because, this isn't, it can't just be Keneb's, feelings on this. It has to be at least a couple of them, if they're just not open to talking about it. But Tavor and her entire character is very private, very quiet. It does not readily avail her plans to her subordinates. So a lot of people, but we see it through the eyes of Keneb, feel like, they're being led to the slaughter, and they're not being given an explanation as to why they should even bother, and at the same time, you get also from Tavor's perspective, not that we ever get her perspective, we get a little bit of it in this book actually, but it's like everybody dies or just some people die. What's better there? So that is part of the problem too with that. But it was a really interesting section, and I enjoyed it. Then we have Lostara gets possessed by Cotillion. I think that was a scene. It matters for a later scene that we'll talk about. Then we move to book 2, and all those main notes for book 2 or book 3. But all the takers of my days. Tool's trying to have his cake and eat it too, because Tool is now murdering children, him and his army. But he tries to justify it by being like, well, yeah, it's necessary, it's just, but Tool is just going down a bad path since he feel like Talk betrayed him. Right, so you mentioned I talked about the Jade earlier. The Jade, so Precious Thimble, another character that I haven't really talked about. We get a horror movie for a second. So the face, this person's face, splits open, okay? And a jade hand comes out of it. Grotesque, terrifying stuff, okay? Do you have an explanation for why that's happening? Not really. But it happened, so now you know too. Mappo is thinking about, even if he finds Ikram, it won't be the same. It's been so long. Last time they were together was the Bone Hunters. And he doesn't know if he can continue to hold the lie for his friend that he did in the past. Just going about like nothing's changed. Kind of everything has. My favorite scene of the book so far, Lostara and Cotillion scene. Just a beautifully written and executed scene where Cotillion apologizes for possessing her. But then there's also a lot of other inferences here to be taken, because part of the thing with this whole thing is that the gods over time forget emotions besides, like anger, love, compassion, joy. That stuff seemingly dissipates the longer you stay, whether you've been a god. The possession sort of gives him a way of reacquiring that. Requiring, the other person has to take all of his anger and stuff for a little bit, but he gets to feel their love and their all stuff, which kind of refreshes him and reminds him, of where he started, which again makes me so curious to read these prequel books by Yancy Esamon that have been coming out, because Cotillion and I get this inclination that he's not too far off from where he was as a human, mostly due to the stuff that he's been doing to kind of keep himself a little bit more human. As opposed to Shadowthrone, it could go either way. Is he just like that when he was Caliban? Or is he acts the way he acts now because he's a god, and because he's forgotten what it means to be human? I'm not sure. But it was a beautiful scene between them, and there's also some inferences. They never say it outright, but if you're, reading it, also sounds like he's actively saying sorry for what he did to Apsalar and to Cutter / Crocus. Love, and how could I take that away from Absalar and Cutter, and I'm telling you, it's like one of my favorite scenes of the entire series so far. Is that scene between those two? And it almost brought me to tears. So, love that scene, and I'm really excited to read those Ian C. Esselman prequels because of this. Then we move on to Book 3, To Charge the Spear. I'm really curious as to what's up with Falash, this, like, princess girl or whatever, because she has a theory of Umtos Falak with Shirkaleo, and they managed to get out of where they're at, and they kind of get stuck in ice for a bit. There's a whole thing, but it feels like a massive side story right now. I'm sure it will matter later, but I'm curious as to who she actually, like, how does she know this stuff or theorize all this stuff? Unless I'm reading correctly, were Beers and Devore romantically involved? Because there's also this lady that's like in love with Beers, so I got confused. But at first it sounded like he was in love with Devore, but I could be completely wrong. Um, I don't know. And then we have uh, T-Hole's Royal Banner of Bed and Chickens. So, the Lether army that went to go help out, um, friggin', uh, their banner is a bed with chickens underneath it. Like when Teal lived on the roof back in Midnight Tides. And I forget, but it was like the clever thing of like, you uh, all of the soldiers are kind of chickens. Is kind of the joke. I thought it was really funny. Beers has this great section about purpose and what is his purpose? What is he meant to do? Why was he brought back? What does that mean? Um, all very good. And then we have kind of the biggest thing from this chapter. And again, a lot of stuff happens in these chapters. Like I can't. I'm not a podcast. I can't talk about this all on my own. It's better when it flows organically with a couple people, but it's just me talking to myself in the ether and the few people who comment on these videos down in the description or down below. So, there's a lot of stuff I'm going over or glossing over. I'm trying to get either stuff that is heavily essential or that I think will be heavily essential, or stuff that I just found interesting. So there's a lot of stuff going on in these books. There's also stuff with like Gruntle and the tiger and everything, and stuff going on with that. There's a bunch of things happening right now. But as to what particularly piqued my personal interest, it was this stuff here. But one of the last things I wrote down before we end out this video was the idea that Tavor's greatest strength is her compassion, and that her plan is to free the crippled god from the chains he's been restrained on forever. What will that mean? What will that do? I guess we'll find out in the second half. But that's it for my thoughts on the first 3 books. Again, I love this series. I love these books. Right now, it just feels like Dust of Dreams Part 2, but I'm really excited to see how everything's going to get wrapped up. I love this series. I really, truly do. I don't always enjoy my time reading it, if I'm being completely honest, but I always finish a book feeling satisfied, and as I think about it over time, on my way to work, on my way to bed, after finishing a book, it all resonates with me more as the time goes on. Does that make sense? Like Deadhouse Gates was not my favorite when I first read it, but every time I think about that book, I like it more. House of Change is still kind of in the same place, except for the first book, which is phenomenal. Bone Hunters is improved, Reaper's Gale, Toll the Hounds. Dust of Dreams is still kind of there, because it kind of needs Crippled God, but, um, so I'm really glad I started reading the series. I'm thankful to the Revanchist for getting me into it. And yeah, can't wait to talk to you guys next week about how this all culminates. Till then, guys. Well, Hood's kind of not doing his job right now, so can't say a little much over you on. Be on Ganos' parents' army, because he seems to be doing pretty good, so, Or go get drunk with Krupi and Darush this time. Till next time, guys. I'll see you.